Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. Tehami. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says, let me quote him, Pakistan stands at a defining moment of economic transformation. Our 5 E's under National Economic Transformation Plan, Udaan Pakistan, is driving this change, focusing on exports, e-Pakistan, environment and climate change, energy and infrastructure, and equity and empowerment. Unquote, while highlighting incumbent governments' achievements to stabilize the country's economy. The Prime Minister at the World Governments Summit 2025 talked about a number of other issues which will also be taking up for discussion during the course of our conversation in today's program. The Prime Minister was on a 2-day visit, and he's already back on the way back to Pakistan after this particular successful visit. According to the Foreign Office statement, he was there to attend the World Government Summit under the theme Shaping Future Governments. Also, Prime Minister met with President of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, in Abu Dhabi. Foreign Office says, let me quote, both leaders stressed the need for further strengthening the brotherly ties between the two countries. The talks emphasized cooperation in economic, trade and development fields, alongside other areas that align with both nations' vision for sustainable economic growth and prosperity. The leaders agreed to make 2025 a year of action, unquote. Prime Minister had also some other important engagements during this particular visit. We'll also be talking about those. For all this, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Mr. Faad Waheed, former Senior Vice President, Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Waheed, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Nasir Khan, former Ambassador. Mr. Khan, thank you very much for your time for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Waheed, if you allow me, let me begin the discussion with Mr. Ambassador Khan. Mr. Ambassador Khan, now let's specifically talk about the World Governments Summit. Shaping the future governments, identifying the areas for the future governance amid that very transformation that is happening globally. And during that particular meeting between President of the United Arab Emirates and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, there was also discussion regarding as to identifying those areas and also chalking out strategies in line with the global transformations which is happening. What's the significance of this particular World Government Summit, and also given the theme that's shaping the future governments?
You see, such organizations as the World Government Summit, they give an opportunity both for government functionaries as well as business leaders to come together, and it is something which is similar to the World Economic Forum in Davos, except that the stress here is more on governance. Mm-hmm. Now, in this particular case, the gentleman who organizes the World Economic Forum is also the CEO, Mr. Klaus Schwab, of the World Government Summit. What is important now, because the economies are becoming increasingly competitive, it's very important that the governments as well as businesses become more and more efficient. Mm-hmm. So when you have economic growth, as our Prime Minister mentioned, it has to be an inclusive economic growth. The other thing that we stressed upon was digital transformation or digital progress within the economy. So to not only digitize the economy itself, mm-hmm. but for businesses to upgrade to latest technologies. So in this summit, you will notice that there will be greater discussions on artificial intelligence and also what sort of returns on investment one can expect to get, because at the moment, the AI companies are spending tens of billions of dollars in this technology. And essentially, it is a race to see whether OpenAI or DeepSeek or Bing, and who's going to dominate. There's Meta. These are different AI tools that are being used, and they are getting increasingly competitive. At the end of the day, this conference gave Pakistan an opportunity to showcase what they have been doing and what they plan to do in terms of attracting investments into Pakistan. Now, in the conference itself, as well as in bilateral meetings, we already have several investments that the UAE has made. They have invested in energy, where you have Port Qasim Power, which is a joint venture between Qatar and the UAE. Then we have in infrastructure, in housing, we have Imar, we have people like the ports, in logistics.
Very important point that you're making right now. But I'll stick to that particular first point, the significance of such forums. I'll come back to you for your detailed understanding regarding as to already the investments which have been made by the United Arab Emirates, how the trade relationship between the two countries have fared so far, what are the prospects, the potential areas in that particular direction. Also, let me bring in Mr. Waheed into the discussion also. Mr. Waheed, World Government Summit. The global transformations happening, as Mr. Ambassador Khan has rightly pointed out, the transformation as far as artificial intelligence is concerned, the information technology is concerned. So this particular theme, when we look at it and try to analyze it in light of that particular global transformation that is happening, the future governments, shaping the future governments. So how do you think those future governments are going to be shaped with these gigantic revolutionary milestones the humanity is achieving with the artificial intelligence and information technology?
Jawad, I think it's rather a big opportunity for Pakistan to learn from these governing states that have participated in this summit. We have to understand how the economies work in the world, how economies work as they work as a stabilizer for the business community and work as a bridge between the governments. So I have served as the Senior Vice President of Islamabad Chamber, can firmly say, it's a big opportunity for a learning process through an entire curve for this government and the UAE itself at this point. So this shows a lot of visibility for Pakistan, especially, and that's what Pakistan needs this at most at this time, because we've had a long, hard crunch of a non-existing FDIs, but now we're seeing a lot of changes, a lot of positive influx of foreign direct investment in Pakistan. So this visit of the Prime Minister marks a good visibility point. And if you remember, recently we just hosted the SEO summit. So I think a foot forward in showing how peaceful Pakistan is, how Pakistan is prospering. But at the same time, when you ask about the technology part, yes, artificial intelligence is playing a very big role, and Pakistan is much lagging behind. 5 years ago, we had no scope of IT. We did not understand how IT was transforming the world. But now, we're seeing a huge change, a huge adaptation change in Pakistan as well. The Minister of IT herself is very worried about how she's going to cope up with this. But that does not show that Pakistan is not adamant to do this. Pakistan is well equipped. Pakistan is doing a very good job at this point in enhancing their capacity to bring more tools of information technology. Similarly, we saw a recent visit of the Prime Minister of Malaysia into Pakistan, and that also had the talk of the same subject, information technology, how both nations can work. And today, the meeting of the President of UAE and Prime Minister SHEHBAZ'S Sharif also undermining and saying the same thing, they have to work on information technology. That states that Pakistan is open and ready for business. So this gives out a huge and positive message for the foreign direct investments to come in, especially the IT sector.
Let's talk a little broadly about the shaping the future governments. Of course, one of the primary functions of any state is to ensure the economic activity happens over there, then the revenue collection also, if we go at the very basics of it. With the advent of this particular artificial intelligence, the transformations that are happening with every single passing day in information technology, how do you think the economies are going to be transformed and how they are being shaped at the moment as we speak?
I think
how such forums like World Government Summit take stock of such changes?
I think this is very important that you mention now. It hits the bell, right? It's how you cooperate with the governments and how shaping the future of governments will be. Back in the day, it was very manually worked out. So let's go to the basics again. How does government run? It runs on taxes. So how do you collect their taxes? Back in the day, it was you registered through NTNs, and then you go to and inspectors allotted to you, and that the whole change. Now it's on a click of a button. You can just understand through information how you can get taxes, and you can actually now anticipate how much taxes you're going to get. So every year when you hear about how FBR is going to gauge those taxes, now they're going to implement those, it's now on a flip of a button. So it's getting easier. And the whole problem now is going to be the implementation of these. How do we adapt to this? So we have to give out a huge awareness session. The government has to work on this with the public sector and with the private stakeholders, especially the chambers, the Federation of Pakistan of Chambers and Commerce, to work together and bring the stakeholders on a stabilizing position to talk between them. Once this is sorted, the bridge is there, then this AI can help in wonders, and not just in tax revenue collections, but also in austerity measures that Pakistan's been lacking. So we have to understand we've gone through a huge program of IMF risk right now, and I hope that the Prime Minister is adamant that we won't go under another program, but I hope it doesn't happen. But at the same time, we have to understand going through IMF programs only reforms you better. So structural reforms are going to be happening, capital reforms going to be happening. So we have to be ready for those. So, and that is the most important thing. I think the stakeholder discussion in this part is the most important thing, because once you feed this AI something, it's going to continue that. So we have to be sure that we teach this thing the right thing for our learning as well.
Ambassador Khan, the world is at the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. Could you shed a little bit of light regarding what this particular fourth industrial revolution is, and how the governments are expected to ideally align themselves in terms of governance, and how they are going to set the direction for the future course of the economy the world is going to see?
Unfortunately, the forecast is not very optimistic for countries that are less developed, because AI is a proprietary technology, and also it is going to be driven by huge data collection and data centers, which requires a tremendous amount of investment as well as a tremendous amount of energy. So the leaders right now are the United States, China, the United Kingdom, and India. At some point, you will realize that these will become not only economic powerhouses, but also political powerhouses. When somebody invests in a country like Pakistan, for instance, there can be two reasons for it. Number one, if he sees a good sized market with buying power, with a decent sized middle class, he can come in and produce something locally to sell to the local population. The other investor could come in if he has an industry which is labor intensive and take advantage of the cheaper labor of Pakistan in order to compete with the rest of the world. Now, as AI and automation becomes more widespread, that advantage that we may have had of cheaper labor will increasingly have less importance in the world. So what are countries like Pakistan supposed to do? Number one, they have to look inwards to their own markets. They have to use AI to improve their governance and their business practices and their manufacturing processes. So there are many niches where you can continue to stay competitive. Like, we have an inherent advantage in the textile industry because our textiles go back 60, 70 years. We have good contacts abroad where we have been supplying to these people. We have a trained manpower over here, and we have the entrepreneurs who are willing to invest in the industry. Now, in order to stay on the competitive edge, these people have to use the new tools of AI and automation to make it more viable. But having said that, then governments start to have a responsibility over those people who may be out of a job, who may be replaced by automation, you see. So these are social challenges that we will be facing. But what is going to, when you talk about the fourth industrial revolution, it is primarily based on the highest level of technology. However, as far as Pakistan is concerned, for instance, we have the mineral wealth that is there, which can always be, it will always be required by people who are developing either semiconductors or batteries or things like that. Then we have the energy potential in Thar coal, which again is debatable these days because of the climate change practice. But more than anything, we have the potential in agriculture. The first potential is not only to be able to feed ourselves, but to be able to produce raw materials for fabric, for instance. Now, this is something that cannot be affected by artificial intelligence. You can use artificial intelligence to make your agriculture more efficient and again, to be able to produce more. But this is a very important political thing. If you can become a breadbasket or you can supply raw materials for an industry like the textile industry, you know, then you can stay relevant in the global economy.
So, when you talk specifically of energy, you talked of the mineral wealth.
Yes.
There have been negotiations going on, and one of the key areas under the head of the Special Investment Facilitation Council happens to be the mining and minerals. The Prime Minister yesterday also talked to the Pakistani business leaders over there as well, highlighting the potential the Pakistani side has got in this particular area. How far Pakistan can go in that particular direction? What are the prospects and what's the potential over there?
I can give you the example of Ricodec, for instance, a company that came here. It's a long story from BHP Billiton in Australia to the Tehseen mining company, Barrick Gold and Antofagasta. They had a concession in Ricodec, which is one of the most inhospitable places in Pakistan, but were willing to invest up to $13 billion in that project. So clearly, if you invest $13 billion, you can expect to get about $50 to $60 billion worth of mineral out of that. There is zinc, there's copper primarily, and some gold and silver, all kinds of things. But I should tell you that this concession was a small part of what the known reserves in Ricodec are. So just to give you an idea of how much that is, the coal that we have in Thar can power our energy needs for the next 500 years. So these are tremendous resources that we have. Now, either we
given the talk regarding climate change, the burning of fuels, I mean, adding to the emissions, Pakistan happens to be one of the least contributor in the emissions of greenhouse gases worldwide, yet had to bear the brunt. That is what we've witnessed over the last couple of years. What about the other sources of energy, which Prime Minister during his address to the World Government Summit has highlighted, talking about the wind power potential in the south, hydropower potential in the north, also highlighting that Pakistan is scaling up as far as the solar energy is concerned.
Yes. You see, solar, the problem that we have in Pakistan, solar energy and wind power is not what we call base load power. Solar energy is available part of the day. From say 9:30 in the morning to maybe 2:30 in the afternoon, you get the maximum amount of power. Wind power is available to you maybe round the clock, but it varies a great deal in speed. And then there is a problem within Pakistan of the strength and the size of the transmission grid, which is often unable to handle that load. But the potential that we truly have in relatively clean power is in the hydroelectric power field. You cannot imagine, I mean, right now we have a total of about 44,000 megawatts installed power. In the peak time, we require about 26,000 megawatts of power. So we have too much power. But we need to convert most of the thermal power plants to hydel plants to provide the base load. I mean, I can give you an example of Norway, for instance. The problem some people have with hydel power is that there's a seasonal change in that. But in the case of Norway, which is like 99.9% running on hydel power, they obviously have much more installed power than they would require in the summer, for instance. They export it to Europe and they have a big cable going to Britain. But the thing is they have provided for those seasonal changes. So we have a potential of about 80,000 megawatts. Now I'm talking about over 50,000 megawatts of run-of-the-river projects. Run-of-the-river projects are those where you don't need to displace large numbers of people. You don't need to have a huge lake. You have like a daily pondage, and it does not displace or disrupt the environment to that extent. Now, these alone are more than the total installed power that we have. So whenever somebody wants to come and invest here, this is what we need to stress upon, that we would like you to invest in this area, because that's a win-win situation. It creates cheap energy for our businesses to be more competitive. It creates opportunities for labor employment while these projects are being made and run, and it also gives healthy profits to the investor to repatriate. The other important thing, as opposed to thermal power plants in the private sector, is that a thermal power plant, its life is between 25 to 30 years, which means on a BOT model, it's impractical. But I have seen, hydel turbines running from 1898. So they have a very long life. So what I'm saying is, you can offer something like this to an investor, a 25-year BOT where he makes very good profits for the next 10 to 15 years, and yet he can transfer an asset to the people of Pakistan, which can go on for another 40 years.
Right. Mr. Waheed, now the Prime Minister also, there are a number of, Mr. Khan, there are a number of points, unfortunately, with short of time, I'll have to quickly cover up a number of other areas also. Mr. Waheed, the Prime Minister in his address at the World Government Summit says 70% of the young and tech-savvy population under the age of 30. Mr. Ambassador Khan has also pointed towards the fact, and there has been a fear that has been felt with the advent of these technologies, with more automation. Perhaps if we've got more population, we do need to inculcate those relevant, the most appropriate skills which are in demand globally at the moment with the advent of these new technologies. Do you also feel that very fear or the threat that more human resource might go redundant with the advent of these technologies?
Well, the fear would be still there, I do understand this fear is there, but then we also have opportunities. These fears always create opportunities for businesses. So I would, at this point in time, recommend the government of Pakistan to be working on vocational training rather than, looking at new companies to come into Pakistan. I would recommend, we need to get better on the certification area sides. Especially, we need to interact with our counterparts, right? People that are providing jobs and the companies that are bringing these jobs into Pakistan. Similarly, let's say a company has a contract from USA in Pakistan. So we need that company in USA to understand our problems here, and we need to bring that technology in. So that's where we have to step in. The private sector has to step in. And the only thing that is going to happen is through stakeholder discussion, as I always say. The government has to now take on board the private stakeholders in this, and we can lead this training programs, and this can happen. But at the same time, the fear will still be there, because there's a lot, the literacy rate of Pakistan is pretty low. So we have to understand that when you have to step up in the right rings to work right. And I would also say, it's imperative to mention the agriculture is going to be the next
agriculture. That is exactly the point where I was coming, because Prime Minister has talked of eco-friendly agricultural innovations, improving water efficiency by introducing different methods that include drip irrigation, precise farming, drought-resistant crops, and water jet management, also incentivizing agri-tech innovations.
Yes, I think that's the most important thing. Corona,
what are these things? Could you shed a bit of light for the general?
Corona has just taught us, how to live in the food security area. So if we can produce our own food, that's the number one, priority at this point globally. Everybody wants to produce their own agriculture at this point. But Pakistan, luckily, inherently, we have this available. We have the land available. We have abundance of water to use. But at the same time, we have a problem of awareness. We have a problem of educating our farmers. We have to inform our farmers how the drip irrigation works, how we can utilize the same amount of water and still not waste it, and have better yield. Similarly, there've been always talks about, since I was a child, we always heard about cotton being produced in Pakistan, exported to other countries. But during the
how do we bring in this particular awareness about these particular different methods of, improving the water efficiency, like drip irrigation, precision farming, drought resistance crops, and water jet management? I would like to point out, you've been associated with this particular
Yeah.
sector in a way or the other.
Yes.
So how does that particular awareness spread generally among the farmers?
It's usually, pilot projects. So the government now needs to head pilot projects in different areas. Similarly, if we talk about olives, olive is a big part of the industry right now. It feeds you right in the fruit form, it feeds you right in the oil form, and it also utilizes in the fodder. So it cultivates all three areas. Similarly, cotton is the same. You can produce cotton here, sell the threads out, bleed the seeds out for oil. So cotton seed oil is there. So you don't need to import oil that way. So these are the pilot projects that government is going to need, and they're going to need big private companies to come in, and the government will have to incentivize those companies to work on these projects because it's not been done before on a larger scale. So bringing these companies in, doing the transfer of technology, just as you said, they're offering a lot of things at agri-tech, but they now need to be specific on sectors. They now to be specific with the food security basket that needs to be done, and that's where Pakistan can kick in, at least in the world, in the scale of, from, I would say, from 0 to 10, Pakistan has a potential of 10 on 10 to work on agriculture.
Now, Prime Minister also met with President of the United Arab Emirates, His Highness Mr. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and both the leaders have stressed the need for further strengthening the brotherly ties between the two countries, especially in the areas of economy, trade, and the development fields. How this particular relationship between the two countries have been, in what focus areas it had been, and what is the potential, what areas could be identified in the future, given the fact when both the leaders talk of the accelerating global transformation at the same time?
See, Dubai is already a transit area, so they understand how the world is working, and they have actually enhanced their experiences, not through just investment, but also through different experiences of the world. So now they have the taste and flavor as a multicultural country. So that's what they're emphasizing on. At this point, I would understand, Pakistan can take this leap forward and work with Dubai at the same, with UAE at the same time. Similarly, in the same context, Pakistan will get a lot of new access in the UAE sectors. We haven't really, explored UAE in the right way we should have done in the past. So I think this opportunity is a new way forward for Pakistani businessmen and the government to work very closely with the United Arab Emirates, to work closely on making better governments, how to facilitate their private sector, how to make sure of bringing in new changes, especially when it comes to governing and bringing the technology in.
Right, Mr. Ambassador Khan, unfortunately we are short of time. This particular relationship between Pakistan and the UAE, historically, how strong it had been, what were the core areas of this particular bilateral trade and economic relationship, what are the potential areas in the future ahead, because both the leaders also identified the global trends in governance, presenting actionable strategies, and the government preparedness in navigating global transformations, also underscoring leveraging these transformations and shifts to accelerate development and build a better future for all, as per the Foreign Office.
You see, when you talk about good governance, when you talk about visionary leadership, you can learn a lot from the development of the United Arab Emirates. In the 1960s, early 60s, they did not have any oil. They didn't even have their own currency. And they were not the United Arab Emirates till 1971. And so they were basically getting assistance from other countries like Kuwait. They had a Kuwait state office there that would develop hospitals and schools for them. But fortunately, when they got the oil, they not only used it very sensibly, they realized that very soon this resource is going to finish. So then they had a plan and a vision on which they worked on the most important factors that would attract foreign investment within the UAE. And Dubai was a leader in this sense. So they provided you good governance, they provided you rule of law, security, they gave you tolerance, and then they provided an incredible infrastructure for people to come and do business over there. So this is something that over the last, I think, 30 years is a revolutionary change that has come about, and Pakistan can learn from that. Because if I am an American investor and I want to come and invest in Pakistan, I will look at factors such as security and rule of law.
Right.
If I don't see a strong legal system, then I don't expect to get justice if I have any agreement that I have made being violated in some sense. So these are factors that we need to learn from. And we don't have enough time, but
There's
we have
much
had
to
a very
learn
strong
from the United
relationship. And Pakistan, by the way, has played a huge part in the development and growth of the UAE, starting from those laborers that worked in the sun with wet
Likewise,
rags on
the
their
UAE
head.
has also reciprocated in the same manner towards Pakistan when Pakistan had to face the economic difficulties and
Absolutely,
challenges.
yes.
Mr. Nasir Ali Khan, former ambassador, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Faad, Waheed, former senior vice president, Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.